Hi everyone, I'm Jules Vidal, I'm a PhD student at Sorbonne University in Paris. I will talk briefly about distances, barycenters, and clusters of persistence diagrams. And then we'll show you how you can compute those using TTK. So let's say you want to compare two scalar fields based on the repartition of their topological features. You can compute their persistence diagrams and compute a distance between those. We have a well-established matrix on the space of persistence diagrams that's called the passage time distance. And it's defined as the cost of an optimal assignment between the pairs of the two diagrams. It can be quite expensive to compute if you have a lot of pairs in a diagram. So in TTK we use the auction algorithm to efficiently approximate the optimal assignments and the passage time distance. When you have a distance, you can define a barycenter of a set of input diagrams as the diagrams that will minimize the sum of its distances, of its passage time distances, to the input diagrams of the sets. The motivation to compute such a barycenter is to get a diagram that would be a good representative of a set of input diagrams and that will encode the topology of an ensemble of scalar fields instead of one scalar field. It can get very expensive to compute because you have to solve a lot of optimal assignment problems during computation. However, in TTK we have a fast way to approximate those barycenter. It's a progressive approach that's been documented in a paper from last year, presented at VIS 2019. And the computation is progressive, so basically at the beginning only the most persistent features of the diagrams will be added into the computation, and as time goes by a lot more persistence pairs will be added in the decreasing order of persistence. So from the user point of view, the method is interruptible. You can set a time constraint and you have the guarantee that when the algorithm stops, the most persistent topological features will have been processed. And if you want to increase the time constraint, you will just gain more accuracy in the results. And this method extends to k-means clustering algorithm using our progressive barycenters as the centroids of the clusters. And as well, this clustering algorithm is interruptible. And in the example folder of TTK, you have two examples showcasing the distance computation on one part and a clustering computation on the other part. And for this hands-on session, I propose to you to reproduce two simpler versions of those pipelines, so this distance computation and the clustering computation. The thing is that both things will be using the same TTK filter that's called TTK persistence diagram clustering that takes care of the distance computation, barycenters, and clusters computation. And it takes a VTK multi-block dataset as an input, so you're going to have to group the input diagrams using the group dataset filter. So now moving on to the tutorial. Okay, so for the first exercise, on the right this is ParaView, on the left my terminal. We will start by opening the Isabelle dataset, isabelle.vti, in the tutorial data folder. So this is a hurricane simulation dataset with 12 time steps, 4 at the beginning of the simulation, 4 at the middle, and 4 at the end. And the scalar field is the magnitude of the wind velocity. So it's an ensemble dataset with 3 clusters basically. So we'll start by computing a persistence diagram. You can press Ctrl and Space to toggle the search engine for ParaView filters. Then you can directly search for the persistence diagram filter. We'll compute it on the first scalar field. Press Apply, and here it is, our first persistence diagram. We will compute another one, so selecting the dataset, Ctrl and Space, persistence diagram, and we'll select another scalar field, for instance this one. Apply. So here we have 2 persistence diagrams. We are going to create a multi-block dataset by selecting both of them using Ctrl and pressing and clicking. Then we can call the group dataset filter and apply. And here we have our VTK multi-block dataset. And on this entry, we can call the persistence diagram clustering filter. So as I said, this filter will take care of the distance computation, but also the barycenters and clustering computation. So basically, here you can specify the number of clusters, and if you have only one clusters and two input persistence diagrams, as it is the case here, the filter will by default use the auction algorithm to compute the Wasserstein distance. So you just need click on apply. Here it is. So the Wasserstein distance is printed in the terminal. Let me increase the font size. Here it is. And in the ParaView window, we have the output. So first thing we can do is change the displaying method. There's an entry in the property menu here, and you can select inspect matchings and then set some spacing, 10 for instance. Here it is. So the filter has three outputs. The first one being the input persistence diagrams that we can color by ID. Here it is. The red and blue diagrams are our input diagrams that we computed just before. The second one is the set of centroids or barycenters that has been computed. Here we do not need it. And third one are the matchings that have been computed to solve the assignment problems. So here we have all the matchings. We can filter those by applying a threshold and only select the matching with a match number field higher than 2 will filter the matchings, and here we see only the matchings that are actually connecting pairs from the two diagrams. So here it is. This is the computation of a Wasserstein distance using TTK inside ParaView. Okay, now moving on onto the clustering computation. You can reset the ParaView scene by pressing Ctrl R or just clicking Reset Session. Okay, and then we are going to open a set of persistence diagrams that will be the 12 persistence diagrams that correspond to the 12 time steps of our ensemble datasets. So instead of computing those into ParaView, I pre-computed them using a Python script that is included in the folder, because it takes a lot of time computing those in ParaView. So you can multi-select those two diagrams by pressing Shift and then grouping the datasets. Okay. And then on these multi-block datasets that contains all 12 persistence diagrams, you can call the persistence diagram clustering filter. Okay, so now we're going to set the number of clusters to be 3, which is the right number for this ensemble dataset. And as you see, the time constraint here is set to 1 second by default. So we're going to leave it that way for the time being. Okay. So the first thing we can do is to change the display method. We're going to change it to clusters as stars, and we'll set the spacing. I recommend to set the spacing of 2. Okay, let's reset the view and remove the matchings. And here we have our 3 clusters. We can color the input diagrams by their cluster ID. Okay. And the result of the clustering is printed in the terminal output. The thing is that the indices that you see here depend on the order that you selected the entries here. So you have to be careful when selecting the entries. And looking at the clusters, we see that inside each cluster, the input diagrams roughly have the same look and the same number of high persistent features can be seen here. And of course the centroid globally has the same look. And if we increase now the time constraints to 10 seconds here, we're going to see that a lot more of persistence pairs will be added into the computation, and our centroids will be a little more populated by pairs. So here we go. Oh, so it took a little bit more time, 2 seconds instead of 10, And yeah, we saw that a lot percent pairs have been added, but globally the look of the barycenter isn't changed much, so we just gain a little more accuracy on the noise of the data here. And we can see as well that the result of the clustering didn't change. So yeah, that was the computational clustering using our progressive algorithm using TTK. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and thanks for watching.